recruitment agencies spend years building up massive databases of candidates that they can go to when a new role comes in. But when that new role does come in, they're spending hours and hours trying to find the right person just to match that role. They're sifting through their experience, their salary expectations, how close they are to the job that's actually being offered, and various different factors. Now, currently, this is a very manual process, and a lot of recruitment agents find that they're going off memory who they think might be a good candidate for a given role. But in a world of AI and Claude Code specifically, we can change that. And that's exactly what I'm going to be teaching you in this live demo today, is how to build a system that solves that exact problem. You give it a job spec, a location, and it's going to go through that big database and find and rank the most appropriate people for that job. It's going to filter out anyone that's too far away or out of budget, pulls everyone in the database against that role, ranks them, and writes a personalized email for the top managers that you can send out. So this is how our build is going to go. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to install a plugin called Superpowers. Now, what Superpowers does is it allows us to use top software development principles where we're actually building the code behind this system. Now, we could go ahead and build the system without Superpowers, but it's a lot more likely that you're not going to get what you actually want the first time around, or close to what you want the first time around, as opposed to if you did use Superpowers. And one thing that I've definitely learned with AI in my experience over the last couple of years of using it is that you want to get as close as possible on the first attempt to what it is you actually want. If you're miles off and you're trying to iterate to that many times, it's going to be a lot less likely that you're going to reach the end goal that you actually want to get to. Now, once we've downloaded Superpowers, we're going to be describing to Claude Code the system that we want to build. Now, there's two parts to that. One is the back end, or that's actually the system that's doing a lot of the hard work, finding the right candidates for the job. And there's the front end, and that's how we actually interact with this system. And we're going to build that through a very simple web app. Now, if you're not familiar, a web app is something that you can just open up on your browser, interacts, and in this case, we're going to be putting in a couple of tabs, one where we can put in what the job is and potentially the location as well. So we're going to give it 2 fields, and then we're going to click send, and then our system is going to go and find the right candidates for that job. Then after that, we're going to have a bit of an iterative process. We're actually building the system because it's unlikely we're going to get it right the first time around. So we're going to probably make a couple of adjustments, and then we're going to test it out and actually have a final product once that's done. So enough talking, and let's get into building the system live. Okay, so step 1 is downloading Superpowers. Now, like I said, Superpowers is a native Claude Code plugin, and because it's actually been so widely used, you can also access it via the official Claude Code plugin store. So you can either go here, and if you hit the copy button, it's basically going to give you a command that you can put into your Claude Code terminal. Or if you want, you can go over to the original GitHub where it's from, scroll down, and you can read the README file where you can see how it works. And these are the different plugins that you can use. So if you want to install it from the official Anthropic marketplace, you can use this command here. Or if you want to install it from this GitHub repo directly, then you can use this one here. Now, to do that, what you want to do is you need to actually open up a Claude Code terminal. If you go into VS Code, which I'll put a link in the description for you to download as well, but it's just an editor if you haven't used it before. You can't actually download it through the app within VS Code. So this is the extension within VS Code, and we can't actually install the plugin through that. What we need to do is we actually need to open up a terminal here. So if you want to open up a new terminal like this, and then start up Claude in your terminal here, and this is where you want to actually paste that command that I just showed you. Or alternatively, if you do want to do it in the VS Code extension, what you can do is you can type /plugin and then go to your manage plugins. And then it's actually an official plugin in the marketplace. So if you scroll down, you can see that Superpowers is here. I've already got it installed, so I don't need to do it, but you can download it directly like this as well. Okay, so once you've got your Superpowers plugin installed, what we want to do now is just create a folder called Recruitment System. Now, this is where all of our files and folders are going to sit in for the system to run. And you can set this up anywhere on your workspace. It doesn't really matter where it is. Now, once you set this up, I'm going to open up a new session in my Claude Code, and I'm going to be describing what I want. Now, before we actually get into building the automation, I'm going to show you the database that my system is going to be built around. Now, this is just a simple Airtable which I have imported from an Excel sheet, and I'll include that Excel sheet in my free school community, which is going to be in the link in the description, along with all the other resources that I have in there. But essentially, this is going to be a database of candidates that we have. So these are all made up, by the way, these aren't real. They're going to contain names, emails, postcodes of where they're based, their salary expectations, their availability, and also attached PDFs. So if I open up one of these PDFs, for example, you can see in here, it's quite just a simple PDF to show you how the system's going to work. It's got the name, their job role, their details, and just your basic kind of CV details that you'd have in there. And we've got that for 20 different candidates in this database. Now, if you haven't set up an Airtable before, I'll quickly show you how to do that. So you literally go here to create a workspace. You name your workspace whatever you want to, hit create, and then you go to build an app on your own. And then when this loads up, what you want to do is you want to import your data. So we're going to go to add or import here, and then Microsoft Excel in this case, and then you're going to drop that Excel file, which I'm going to provide to you, into here. Or obviously, if you've already got one, you put your own one into there. Okay, perfect. Now we've got that, we can go into building the system. So if I was building quite a complicated front end, by front end I mean the web app that as a user we're going to interact with this system with, I would actually probably sketch something up in Figma to design how I want it so it's closer to actually what I want the first time around. But because we're going to be creating quite a simple web app in this tutorial, I'm not going to do that. So now I'm going to describe to Claude Code exactly what it is I want. Hey, so I run a recruitment agency, and in my agency I have a database containing candidates and various details about them. So things like their name, their email, their postcode of where they're based, their salary expectations, things like that. And I also have an attached PDF for each of the candidates in my database system. And this is all in an Airtable. Now, I want to build a system where when I get a new job that comes in, instead of me having to spend hours finding the right candidate for that job, I basically want you to go through my database, rank my candidates from best fit to worst fit, or there's a few factors I want you to consider actually. So I want you to consider how close they are to the job that's being advertised, how closely their salary expectations match, how closely their CV matches. Basically take all of these factors into consideration and then give me back a ranked list of these candidates. So that's how I want to interact with it in the back end. Now, in terms of how I want to actually interact with it as a user, I basically want to be able to give you details of the job, whether that be in a file format or text format, and then you pull the relevant details from it, like location and all the details that you need to, and then you rank and you give me back a ranked list of my best candidates that would match the job, and also draft me up a custom email based off their experience and what the job's requiring I can send out to these candidates. So that's us describing what we want out of this system. And now just at the end of this prompt, what I'm going to say is I want to say make sure to use your superpowers when building this. Now, superpowers would probably automatically trigger when we're actually building this because it's quite a code heavy system, but we're going to just make sure it's going to get triggered by adding this at the end of our prompt. So I'm going to turn this on to bypass permissions, and then we're going to hit send. Now, at the time of actually recording this video, Claude Fable just dropped the other day as well, which is Claude's newest and best model, but it also uses 2 times the amount of tokens. So for your really complex projects, it might be worth using, but for a relatively simple system like this, you'd probably be able to get away with a classic Claude Code. So this is actually one of the best features of Superpowers, is that to build some of the front end stuff, it wants to show you it in a web browser, and this can be really good for comparing your different options. So I'm going to say yes to what Claude Code asking me for right now. Okay, so it's actually loaded up a local host browser for me, so I'm going to open this up now and see what the options are that it's offering. So I like option A here, which is a web app. So I'm going to click this option, and then we're going to return to our terminal to continue here. So I'm going to say option A. So you can see that it's asking us what do we want to upload into our web apps. Is it a text, so just describing the job that's come in, or is it a file that might have come in from a client? And I'm going to say both, so I want both these options. So I'm going to say option C. So from these 3 options, in terms of what we want the results page to look like, I'm going to go for option A here. So going back to Claude Code, I'm going to go through option A. Now you can see the kind of pattern that's going on here. It's basically asking me some really detailed questions before it builds anything. And this is really good because, like I said at the start of the video, the closer that you can get to what you want the first time round, the more likely that you're going to actually end up the end result that you wanted. Now I'm going to answer all these small questions that Claude Code is asking me, and then we're going to jump back into the main part of the tutorial once that's done. Now I'm just going through the last question that Claude Code has been asking me. and I should make a note on this because we're doing this for a local system. So you have two options here. You can either host the web app that I'm talking about online, so you'd have to put that on a cloud service, for example, or you can do it locally. And for the purpose of this tutorial, that's fine too. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this. But if you wanted to do it for an organization, you could do it online on the cloud. So this is the system architecture that is put together and how all the different parts are connected. Now you want to go through these, see if they look about right. You don't need to know all of the details because you're likely not going to be a developer that's actually building this system. Go through some of the setup requirements, and then if it all looks good or looks roughly correct, then you can go back to Claude Code and say, yep, good to go. Now for the purpose of this, I'm not going to make any changes. I'm just going to say, yep, it's all good. And we're going to see how close we actually get to a working design the first time around. So it's now given me a bit of a UI mockup. So what it's going to look like when we open our web app, and then what it's going to look like once it's found the right people. So I really like this kind of UI that is presented to me. So I'm going to go back to Claude Code and say, yep, I'm happy with that. So you can see that it's written a spec and it's also done a self-review and cleaned up any details that it found needed fixing. So for example, to also include any docx files if I drop that in there, not just a PDF, which is a really good little addition. Now you can go ahead and open up the spec file to make any amendments that you want to. I'm just going to go ahead and accept everything that's in there. Okay, so it's created a plan and it's ready to actually execute that, and it's given us two options to do that. So either sub-agent driven or inline execution. Now I'm going to do sub-agent driven, but before we actually execute that, what you'll notice here is that our context window is actually getting quite filled up. Now, to save yourself tokens and prevent this from compacting, which is going to mean that your context isn't going to be as good, what we want to do is actually clear this conversation and then start a new conversation where we work on just implementation. And because we've got a plan, we've got all the details that we need in there. So I'm going to just make sure Claude's got all the context that it needs to before we do that, and then I'm good to clear the conversation, and then we can clear our context window and then execute everything. So you can see that Claude Code's got all the information it needs to, so we can clear this conversation now and start a new one. We actually execute this, and I'm going to use this exact command that it's given us to do that. So we're going to do clear conversation, and now I'm going to paste in the command that it gave us, go to bypass permissions, then we can hit send. Okay, so finally, after quite some time now, it's gone through multiple different steps. You can see it went through 13 steps here, and it's created our app. So for us to start using it, we need to do a few things. So we need to get our Airtable API key, the base ID, and the Anthropic API key, and then we can open it up in this local browser here. So let's go and do these 3 steps. Okay, so we're going to go back over to Airtable. You're going to click on your account, and then you're going to go over to Builder Hub here. Now, once you open up Builder Hub, we want to create a personal access token. So we're going to hit on create token. And then in terms of the scope, what we're going to add is records read, and this should be enough. If not, our Claude Code will tell us. And then we're going to, in terms of access, we're going to say it's got access to all resources here. And then we're going to hit on create token. Now, once you've got your token, you want to copy that and then put that into your .env file. So you can see here it says we want to copy everything to our .env example and then basically make that our .env file. So going over to our .env example, we're going to put the API key in here, the one that we just created. Then we want to get the base ID and the table name. Now, our base ID is going to be in the URL here. So you just want to copy where it says app and then all the way up to this slash here. And this is going to be what our base ID is. Okay, so we've got our 3 things we need from Airtable now. We've got the key, the base ID, and the table name. And now our final thing that we need to get is the Anthropic API key. Now, to get your Claude API key, you want to go to the Claude console, which is platform.claude.com. And then you want to hit create key here, copy that key into your .env file. Now, once we've got everything that we need in here, I'm just going to rename it to .env. Okay, so now we've added all of our keys, base IDs, our Claude key. We can do step 2 and 3 now. Now I could actually just run this myself, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Claude to actually do this part. So I'm going to say I've added all the keys and bases in now, can you run the app? Now while this is running, I remember that I didn't actually specify what the exact structure was of the Airbase table. So we're going to see how first time round, without me even being specific on what the structure was, how our app is actually going to perform. Okay, so hopefully the app is up and working now. So I'm going to go to this local link that I've got here. So I've just opened up the app now and it looks like we've got a pretty decent front end. I did ask for it to be quite simple. So we've got both the inputs that I wanted. So either just plain text or also the opportunity to upload a file. I noticed that actually as I'm clicking around this, there's 2 tabs, but nothing actually changes here and we can just drop our PDF in. So we could probably get rid of one of these tabs. which we can do in an iteration. But I have a PDF which I'm going to use as a test in here, which I'm showing on screen now. And this is for an operations manager based in Bristol with a certain salary range of 45 to 55,000. The experience needed is 3+ years. They're needed ASAP. So there's a few specific things that this client wants, and we're going to see who actually ranks as our best candidate. Okay, so I'm going to drag and drop that PDF in here now, and let's see what the results are. Cool, so I've dropped it in, and we're going to hit on Find Best Candidates. Okay, so as I've gone to hit Find Best Candidates, it's come up with an error here where I actually need to manually paste in a job description. So that's something that I actually want to iterate on, and I want it to pull everything from the PDF instead of me having to put in a job description. But for now, we'll run this to see what the results are. Okay, so we've just run into an error when I've tried to run the app, and it's actually because I incorrectly copied the wrong Airtable ID into our .env file. So in the .env file, I had the Airtable name as Recruitment Database and this part here, but this was a mistake, and we just need to have up to the slash. So mistake on my part, and this needs to be changed to Candidates. So just to show you here, Candidates is the name of the Excel table I have that I've imported. If I go back one more, then that's what it was called, Recruitment Database. Okay, so after updating that, we're going to run this again and see if we get a good result this time. Okay, so we've run it again and we've still got an error. So this is a really good example of what a live build actually looks like. It's never right the first time around. So I'm going to go back to Claude and say, this is the error that's coming up, and I'm going to attach a screenshot and see if it can fix it. Okay, so we're going back to Claude now. I'm going to ask it to fix the problem that we have. Okay, so Claude seemed to have fixed the problems that we have now. So there was a couple of problems that were stacked on top of each other. And so we're going to go test out the app and see if it works correctly now. Okay, so round 2, let's see how this performs. Okay, so it seems it's scoring our candidates, and this had failed by this point last time. So hopefully we've got a better result this time round. Now, after running the second time round, we've got some results, which is good, but it doesn't seem to actually process the data correctly. So you can see in all of these, we have a 50% match. Now, when I actually hit on the drop down to open up some more information, it says that CV summary appears to be blank, and similar here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to let Claude know what the structure of the Airtable is, and hopefully this is going to help it perform better, and we're going to instruct it that we want it to get all of its information from the PDF attached to that row. So the app seems to be working this time around, which is good, but there's a couple things I want to change. One is a cosmetic issue. So we have 2 tabs in our app. One is for a text input and one's for a PDF kind of input. Now, when I go to do a PDF input, you also require me to add the job description in as like a text file. Now, when I want to put a PDF in, all I want to do is just drop the PDF in and that's it. And then you use that as your data to analyze what the job's about and what's required for that specific job. The second issue is that when we actually ran the app to get our top candidates for a test job, it seems that you were looking for some CV summaries. So I'll attach what's actually in our Airtable, but you should be able to see the columns that you're pulling anyway. But what I want you to do is when you're looking at a specific person, to get all the information about that person, if they're the right fit for the job or not, you should look at the fields that are in the Airtable and specifically kind of pull information from the PDF as well that's attached for that given person. Okay, so it seems that Claude's fixed a couple of the issues in our app, so we're going to see how this performs this time around. Okay, so it seems the first issue is fixed here, so when we go to upload a file, we don't have to add our text in here, so we just can drop a file in. So that's the first issue, seems to be solved. On the third time round, it seems we've actually got some decent results now. So it's ranked our top 10 candidates, for Sarah Mitchell being number 1 with a 77% match, and then Mark with a 57% match. So let's open up what our top and bottom candidates look like and see if these actually look about right. So we've got an email here which we can copy and paste over as well if we wanted to actually send this out to this person if it was real. But let's go over to their CV and see if it matches the job. So you can see for our job that we're actually advertising for, it's in Bristol, a salary range of 45 to 55,000, a hands-on role in day-to-day production, logistics, facilities, some key responsibilities here, 3+ years experience. So let's see if Sarah matches this kind of job description. Okay, so Sarah, who is based in Bristol, has a salary of 48,000. So those 2 immediately tick, and she also has an availability which is immediate. So these are all really, really good potentials for this job. She has over 10 years experience in operations, so well over the 3+ years that's required, and seems to in general match this job description really well. Now let's compare to Mark, who had a 57% match here. So Mark, who is based in Bath, I believe this postcode is, has a salary of 54,000, so just about in the range, but has an availability of 1 month. So in general, it seems that Mark would also be a pretty decent fit, and a lot of these PDFs are for roles that are in a specific sector. So a lot of people will still match for a role, but I guess because he's based in Bath, that our AI has ranked him slightly less. We will go back and tweak what our judgment criteria is and how strong we want it to be on certain things. But as a first go around, this isn't a bad start for what we're looking for. Now that is our system from start to finish. Obviously, in reality, we'd actually iterate on this and make sure we tweak our AI judgment to match exactly what we wanted and any bug fixes that we have. But I made a couple of fixes in there so you can see the kind of logic that you would do behind that. Now, if you're a business owner, particularly in the recruitment industry, and you want to build something like this for your business, then just go to the discovery call, which will be linked in the description to start that process. If you're an agency owner and found this useful, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps me out a bunch. That is all for me, and I'll catch you in the next one.